I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Today, I want to talk about restricted executive bonus plans. What I like about restricted executive bonus plans, it's a very simple way to recruit and retain our key employees. And as we see, the market for the good employees is getting tighter and tighter. So how can we do something unique that would allow the business owner to keep his key people in the business and really get out of them what they need? So if you start looking at this, we recruit good people, and we talk about rewarding key people, but are we doing it the most effective way? And of course, retention. If we aren't retaining our good employees, well, we have to keep rehiring, retraining, and we're going to lose that continuity that helps our business grow. So let's start looking at this. One of the big issues, and think about the retention gap. That gap between how do we keep our good employees and how do we recruit, the next group as they come in as our business grows. Well, the first thing is we have to have something that stands out, a selective benefit that stands out that's different than somebody else. It's unique. It's there to reward these unique individuals that are the human capital of our business. So, one, how do we attract in the right people? Next, how do we reward them? And it's got to be a meaningful benefit for a key person. And you start thinking about the key people that make that company run. And it could be high level CEO, it could be a manager, making sure that the whole business just flows. Whatever is key to that business, that if we lost that individual, it's going to be a significant income issue. And there again, it's hard to find the next good person to take in. And finally, how do we keep them? And so when we talk about the restricted executive bonus, we're going to talk about vesting. And vesting is that way to give them a reason to stay. So if you see down at the bottom, a cash bonus says thank you. A restricted benefit adds stay. How do we keep them so they stay longer and help our business grow? So to keep it simple, it's one, we're going to have our employer. The employer is going to select the key employees. There again, it's who they want and how big of a bonus do they need. There again, that bonus needs to be meaningful. So of course, our highly compensated, something to move that needle is going to be more for them. So it's whatever it is that moves that needle, for our key employees. When we look at the executive bonus plan, it's going to be a W-2 bonus. We're going to give that employer a potential deduction. And there again, it's a potential deduction because we have to stay within reasonable compensation, which is not as big of an issue when we're talking about non-owner employees. But if they're owner employees, then we've got issues. So we want to make sure it's reasonable. The employee, if they're going to report that bonus as income, but we're doing this with a life insurance policy. So the individual employee is going to own that life insurance policy. The nice part about having that life insurance policy is, once this is vested and they own and have access to the policy, they have access to the cash value life insurance. So we're overfunding this policy. And we've got a death benefit in case our employee dies prematurely. But we're building up that cash value that gives them that excess, tax-free what if money, extra retirement money, whatever it is, for the future. But also remember, we've got a death benefit protection to protect their family. So now instead of just giving our employee a cash bonus that they say thank you, now we've provided something that's more protection for their family and more tax efficient for the future. So if you look at this, the employer gets the potential deductible bonus. The employee is going to take a current taxable compensation, and the policy, that value that we add there is depending on the design of the policy, and we can be very unique in the design for that individual employee. So if you had multiple employees in the bonus plan, we may have 3 or 4 different designs on the insurance. It's whatever is meaningful to that employee. So the planning point here is, it's simple to explain, it's selective in design, and it's not built like a qualified retirement plan. So we aren't dealing with ERISA rules It allows you to select the employees that you want to benefit. Now, the key to this is adding the restriction. This restricted endorsement that we're going to put on there is the retention lever to keep that employee for whatever period of time we decide. So if you think about a cash bonus, you give an employee a cash bonus, they've got the money in the hand, they can leave with the benefit. That's a great reward, but it doesn't have a meaningful retention control. The client, the employee says, "Thank you very much. I worked hard for this bonus," and they're out the door and can go to another employer. We've lost a key employee. If we add the restricted bonus, then this is one of the reasons that I like about having the life insurance policy in play here is we can put a restriction on the access to that cash value inside the policy. So think about it having your mortgage on your house. Well, you tell everybody, yes, I own my house, but in reality, the bank has a lien or a restriction on your access to the values that you've been building in that house. Until you satisfy that lien, you can't sell the house. You can't go get another loan on the house without the bank agreeing to it. Same things happens here. We're building up this cash value in this policy, but unless you've met the restriction, vested it, stayed long enough to vest this policy, you can't access all the benefits of that policy while you're alive. If the employee were to die, that death benefit pays out without the restriction. So as we go through time, 3 years, 5 years, that value in that policy builds. The longer you stay, the longer we fund that policy, the more benefit we're creating. So the mechanics. So step one is we're going to have the employer pay. This is an employer paid program. The bonus dollars fund the premium of the policy. And we can decide this can be for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long we want this to go. And a lot of times I'll tell the employer, hey, the longer the employee stays, the better it is for you. So let's encourage them to stay and show them the benefit of staying. The policy is owned by the employee from day one. They get to decide who the beneficiary of that policy is, which there again ties their family into this loop. So now the family is invested in the employee staying and working and getting all their benefits. Finally, that income is going to be taxed on an annual basis. The employer gets a deduction. The employee recognizes this as income. And then after they've stayed long enough to vest the benefits, they have unrestricted access to the policy and now can use those cash values, those tax-free access to the cash value, however the employee wants to, whether they access it or not. That's their choice, just like any life insurance policy. But they can see that benefit's there and they can see it growing over time. So the longer they stay, the bigger that benefit, and then they vest and get access. So that's the whole retention loop in the executive bonus agreement. Finally, it's one we want to design it like a retention tool. This plan works best with the restriction. If we don't have a restriction, the vesting in here, then it's no different than a cash bonus where the employee says, thank you, and can walk out the door. So let's think about where this can fit. This is where we have key employees that are hard to replace. We have a business that wants to create selective benefits, selective people that they can customize that benefit for, because we have there again employees at different levels. So we want to be able to account for all that. The retention period and the vesting schedule, that is all going to be based on our employer deciding what's best for the company, how long do they want to pay premium, how much premium they want to put in. So we're going to model that and make sure that it works. Now, the caution for the employer, don't overpromise. We show them what this can do. We show them that it's an insurance policy that can grow. They can have the benefits, but we don't want to overpromise anything. Finally, if you think about what the design layers are, who qualifies? Well, that's up to our employer. How much premium? They're again up to our employer. What vesting schedule? They're again the employer's deciding what's best for them. And what policy design? We're going to work with the employee to make sure it fits their design. So this is one, by the end of the process, we have a a benefit that the employee appreciates. We've got a benefit for the employer to retain their key people. And at the end of this, it's a very simple plan to implement and maintain and move forward with. So I appreciate everybody getting on. If you have questions, reach out. If not, we'll talk again next week. Thank you.